call this meeting to order. I declare that a quorum is present and the media has been notified. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the agenda. It's been seconded. Do we have any discussion of the agenda? Then all of those in favor of this motion, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Then that motion carries 8-0. At this time, I will ask everyone to please stand with us for an opening prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. Our Father, who art in heaven,
hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of May the 24th, 2016, and the budget workshop of May the 24th, 2016?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the minutes for the regular meeting on May 24th, 2016, and also the budget workshop on May 24th, 2016.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting and the budget workshop both on May the 24th, 2016. Is there any discussion? Then at this time, all of those in favor of this motion, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Then that motion is approved 8-0. Moving on to agenda item number 5, the legacy builders. We have special recognition. I'm not going to read that whole big long list. I'll leave that up to Ms. Murray.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Superintendent Blackburn, ladies and gentlemen of the board, and all of you who have joined us this evening. We have several recognitions tonight, and our first is Daniel Island Community Fund and Blackbod. Cainhoy Elementary Middle School students will benefit from an additional $40,000 for the 2016-2017 school year as a result of a $20,000 contribution from the Daniel Island Community Fund and a matching $20,000 contribution from Blackbod. The funds will be used to increase educational opportunities for students at the school. We can't thank Daniel Island Community Fund and Blackbod enough for your generous donations, because undoubtedly they will make a huge difference in the lives of not only our students, but their families as well. At this time, would Jane Baker, VP of Community Services for the Daniel Island Property Owners Association, and Rachel Hutchison with Blackbod please come forward to accept your certificates? And will Ms. Shaw and Ms. Jennings also come forward?
Can't pass up the big check.
All right, we have.
Yeah, we can. Me and we'll hold the check. This is the Blackbod portion. We didn't bring two.
Can you get everybody?
Okay, one step this way.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Next, we were going to recognize Hanahan High's boys tennis team, but unfortunately they weren't able to be with us tonight. I would like to say, however, that the team went 16-0 and defeated AC Flora High for the state championship, and during the season, the team beat Hilton Head High 3 times. So let's just give them a round of applause in their absence. And we'll be sure they get their certificate as well. At this time, we'd like to recognize Stratford High's softball team. By the end of the first half of the season, the team had a 9-9 record. But the Lady Knights fought hard and ended the regular season winning 6 of their last 7 games. And they headed to the Region 7 championship. The team won the District 5 championship, defeating Somerville 5-3 for the lower state title. At the beginning of the state championship, the Lady Knights had a rocky start, losing their first game 10-3 in a best-of-3 series against Burns High, a team that had only 2 losses all season. Stratford went on to outlast Burns High 2-1 in a 9-inning pitcher's duel at home, and then defeated Burns 3-2 in the finale at Carolina Softball Stadium for the Class 4A state title. Despite battling injuries and a number of other obstacles during the 2016 season, the Lady Knights proved that tough times don't last, but tough teams do. At this time, with Stratford High's softball team and coaches and Principal Taylor, please come forward to receive the certificate.
Parents, you can come on up. Parents, if you'd like to come up and take a picture.
We good? All right. Everybody stay in place. You got one more? Oh, okay. Everybody in? Now we'd like to recognize Stratford High's boys 4x800 meter relay team. The team is the Class 4A state champion. With a time of 7 minutes, 55 seconds, the team has the fastest time in the state this year and was just 2/100ths of a second off from Stratford's school record. The team will run in the New Balance High School Nationals this Friday. I'd also like to add that sophomore Devontae Fuller, who is not here with us tonight, won the 4A Open 400 meter with a time of 48.2 seconds, a school record. And he will compete at nationals in the 400 meter, 800 meter, and the 4x800. Will the team, coaches, and Principal Taylor, again, please come for your certificate and for photos. You good? You good? All right, next we'd like to recognize Keyshawn Limehouse from Berkeley High. Limehouse finished the season at the 2016 state track and field competition, winning both the 110-meter hurdles and 400-meter hurdles, and placing 5th in the 100-meter in the Class 3A division. All 3 performances earned all-state recognition. He also won both the 110-meter hurdles and 400-meter hurdles this season at the all-county and all-region meets. Limehouse won the 110-meter hurdles and 400-meter hurdles at the South Carolina Coaches Classic in March at Dutch Fork High, and currently holds the fastest times of the 2016 season in the state in the 110-meter hurdles with a time of 14.42 seconds, and 400-meter hurdles with a time of 54.26 seconds. He earned Most Valuable Male Track Award at the 2016 Berkeley County Meet, as well as Berkeley High's Most Valuable Sprinter Award for 2016. At this time, would Keyshawn Limehouse please come forward to receive your certificate, and his coaches as well. Now we'd like to recognize Goose Creek High's Stone Coles. Coles competed in the 2016 Father Kelly Classic. He participated in the boys' 110-meter hurdles and finished in 15 seconds. Coles also competed in the boys' 400-meter hurdles, winning first place with 55.32 seconds. Both are school records, by the way. He also competed in the USATF National Youth Indoor Track and Field Championships and completed the 55-meter hurdles in 8.32 seconds. At this time, would Stone please come forward with his coaches to receive his certificate? And I was just informed that he is not here, but we do appreciate it. That's awesome. We'll make sure that you get his certificate. Thank you. Now, our next student is Cane Bay High's Samaria Mazik. She was the 2016 4A state champion in the shot put. Samaria was a 4-time all-state selection, twice in the shot put and discus. She also was a 2-time Region 7 4A all-region selection, and she was just selected to the Post and Courier all-low country track team and the High School Sports Report all-state team. At this time, will Samaria, her coaches, and Dr. Westbury please come forward to receive a certificate? Yeah, I was about to say, Next, we'd like to recognize Cane Bay High's Nikhil Tolliver. Tolliver was the 2016 Class 4A state champion in the 110 hurdles. He was a 2-time all-state selection, 2-time Region 7 4A all-region selection, too. Also, Tolliver was just selected to the Post and Courier all-low-country track team and the High School Sports Report all-state team. At this time, will Nikhil, his coaches, and Dr. Westbury please come forward to receive your certificate?
Who's number 1? Ready, set, go.
And finally, last but definitely not least, we'd like to recognize Cane Bay High's Keenan Simpson. Simpson won his third consecutive state championship at the South Carolina Strength Championships this past March. He was one of 2 athletes to win 3 consecutive state championships in weightlifting. Also, Simpson was named South Carolina Strength Competitor of the Year for 2016. At this time, would Keenan Simpson, his coaches, and Dr. Westbury please come forward to receive your certificate? That concludes our students for this evening, but would all of the parents and families of the students who are recognized please stand? We want to give you all a round of applause as well. That concludes our recognitions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. For all of those who are here for the legacy builders and the recognition and everything, this would be a good time if you would like to go out the door. We're getting ready to go into some other things, and we'll give you a little bit of time. Thank you all for being here.
I think the guy from Berkeley was the one that he said won the Berkeley meet, so he's the fastest, hands down of all of them. But still.
We only have one. Has to do with the buildings.
You had different state class. It's Class A. And both of them then.
These fellas here.
My daughter was a state champion. Hey, how you doing, baby? What's up, buddy? There's Tommy Stoner waiting on Tommy.
And that's what we should be about. That's part of our mission. We have a lot of state champions.
Our next item on the agenda is the citizens' comments. And before we go into those, I am going to read the procedures. In order to conduct the meeting in an orderly and efficient manner, we ask that you honor the following guidelines. The stakeholder comments are welcomed and encouraged. However, the board will not take immediate action or public comments at this meeting. Any person wishing to address the board must register prior to the meeting. Comments must be regarding programs, policies, or procedures. Comments regarding complaints against employees or other than the district level executives or references to students other than the child of the speaker will not be heard in public session. Groups addressing the same topic should select one speaker. To maximize participation, comments will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and the board has set aside a total of 30 minutes for the public comments. The board chair does reserve the right to allot additional time or to halt public comments that do not adhere to the guidelines. Tonight we have one speaker, and this speaker, if you'll come to the podium at this time, is Ms. Tukey Harrop. Harrop?
Welcome, Ms. Harrop.
Thank you. Hey, it looks like I'm going to really preach with all these books, right? I'm Tukey Harrop, and I'm here representing people that are with me to talk about the 1929 Berkeley High School building that's on Main Street. And I just want to start with a little story that appeared in the state paper in 1917, and I sent a copy of it to the board members yesterday, and Ms. Blackburn. But in 1917, there were 1,500 people that assembled in front of the courthouse on California Avenue in Moncks Corner. It was on March the 30th. The weather was beautiful, and it was all for the public school children in South Carolina, in Berkeley County. And can you imagine 1,500 people? The school that came the furthest was called New Hope 2, and they traveled 38 miles. Now, I'm not sure exactly where New Hope 2 was, but it was 38 miles from from Moncks Corner. They had 30 children at that school. 17 attended with their teacher, Miss Edwards, and they came in a wagon. And they had, in the morning, they had academic competitions, and the article tells you all the schools who won, and they were divided by 2 teacher schools and 3 teacher schools and so forth and so on. They had lunch. They give a detailed menu of what was prepared by the women of Moncks Corner. And then they had athletic competition in the afternoon. They had a professor from the Citadel and a teacher from Porter School, it was just Porter then, not Porter Goud, come to be the judges. And they borrowed a band from Porter School to lead the parade. And the paper went on in this article to say what an outstanding job the Board of Education and the superintendent had done in the previous 2 years. Registration was up 20%, attendance was up 21%. We had gone from 0 wagons to 10 wagons to transport students. And I can't even imagine that. Other statistics were cited as well, but the state paper had this glowing thing of Berkeley County, of all the places, leading the way in public education. So it was a backhanded compliment at best. I found this article to be very interesting to me because I know that my granddaddy was there. In 1917, he would have been 11 years old. He grew up in the Macedonia community on what's Bethera Road, I don't know what it was called then, and attended school in Macedonia. His daddy died when he was 5. His mother was pregnant with her 9th child. His daddy was the postmaster of Bono, and his mother was able to get that job after her husband's death. But my grandfather grew up in a very poor family, but he had a teacher that made him appreciate education, and he wanted so badly to go to high school, but there was none in Macedonia at that time. So he went to high school in Bono. Did y'all know that? Did you know it was a high school in Bono? There was. It was a brick building. I remember it. Anybody else? Miss Johnston? Okay, good. Now back me up. And he graduated from there in 1925. He was 19. It took him a while. But his mother let him leave home. She let him give up his farm work to do his part of that, and he found an uncle that let him live there. And he gave haircuts to make money, even though he was not a licensed barber. I tell you this story because he was a lucky one that was able to do this. Other students throughout Berkeley County could not. So dormitories were built at the current high school, the 1929 building. There were dormitories there built in 21 and 22. The superintendent that was hired came with the stipulation that he and his wife had to live in the girls' dorm. That was part of their requirement. So, Miss Blackburn, you might have had to live in the dorms.
I feel blessed.
I think they said there were 450 students in this one article that I read later. There's 2 books that have a lot of good information. One is from Carol Poole's book class. Angela McCants wrote a big article on Berkeley County schools. And then the History of Moncks Corner by Maxwell Orvin, which was printed in 1950, and now you can just find bad copies like this. But I think in 1940, there were 450 students, and 65 of them lived in dorms because there weren't roads in Berkeley County to allow them to have buses to go back and forth. So the point I'm trying to make with all this history is that building personifies what public education means to the citizens of Berkeley County. It is a visible, tangible piece of our history that we can look to and know that as impoverished as this county was, Santee Cooper didn't come here till the early 30s. So this was a poor, poor place, and yet they did everything they could. They started the school in 1912 in Moncks Corner in a little cottage. By 1919, they had a brick building with an auditorium in the 2nd floor. In 1926, they added a big auditorium that seated 800 people. I bet I can get people to raise their hands and say who danced on that stage. Yes. And then this building was built in 1929. So I just encourage you, I don't know what you're doing with the building, but please don't tear it down. Please do something with it, because it is not just a building to the people of this area. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 7, the administration and facilities. Item for action is the Berkeley Education Center, an update and a recommendation. Mr. Jackson.
Mr. Chair, there's an issue.
There's a blue Jeep out in the parking lot that's got these other cars blocking. They can't get out.
There you go. Blue Jeep. Okay, go ahead, Dion.
All right, you ready? All right, good evening, Chairman Hayes, Superintendent Blackburn, members of the board. As you recall, the April 26th meeting, we did a capital projects presentation. Part of that presentation, the spotlight actually, was the Berkeley Education Center project, or the old high school. We spoke about it and spoke about some of the issues that we were having and potential alternatives that we were going to research and then follow up with an update, and this is that update. Just a quick recap. The purpose of this project, the 2012 bond referendum included language that the old high school would be restored, or the Berkeley Education Center would be restored. Due to the district's projected growth, any available structure that the district has could be used as potential classroom space or potential office space to use to house students or staff as we continue to grow. Moving Head Start to this space would free up classroom space in existing schools, existing area schools. If the facility plan use is modified, the space will provide for additional offices, office space and multi-purpose meeting area that could be used for community use. And also the space would incorporate a new and larger boardroom. The building's history and unique architecture, as Ms. Harrop noted, makes it a community interest in preserving this Monk's Corner property as restoring it to a useful place. The budget situation, this is what we discussed at the last meeting, at the April 26th meeting. So the current bond project, the budget is $5 million. The total cost estimate, this is construction, demolition, and also FF&E to outfit the building, is $7.5 million as an estimation, creating a budget gap of $2.5 million. So the problem is the district has to make a decision on how to obtain alternate funding sources or decrease the construction cost to close the budget gap. So the current status of the building. So current considerations, the initial budget for the BEC is not adequate enough to fund a complete project, which we just discussed. And then also the building's condition, which Ms. Crystal Queen, which will be the project manager for this project, she's going to discuss the condition of the building with you all. Some potential solutions is to modify the facility usage plan, utilizing the building for additional office space and multi-purpose room. If we do that, we would alleviate the need to meet the Office of School Facilities, or OSF's, standards and specifications, which would decrease the pricing. We could also seek special grant funding opportunities from a highly qualified grant writer, which would help, again, to close the budget gap. At this time, I'm going to invite Ms. Crystal Queen to discuss the condition of the building and then also the facility usage plan.
All right, I'll jump right in. Just a reminder from our last presentation. Currently, the building has been condemned due to its current situation, so there's no activity in this building at all right now. The roof system is failing, and part of the roof has collapsed in the north corner on the second floor. There are multiple roof leaks throughout this facility. There's significant water intrusion from the roof and the windows, which is causing even more damage to the building. The windows, again, are original to the facility, so they are also deteriorating. They do not have insulated glazing, which is another problem with heat, moisture, those kind of things in the building. The plaster finish that is on some of the walls in this facility is actually pulling away. And you'll see some pictures they're falling in the floor. I mean, so the wall finishes are pretty bad. The wood floors are buckling at this point due to moisture in the building, some other water intrusion. The exterior of the building, the mortar joints are weak, so we need to repoint the entire building at this point. And the mechanical systems have reached their capacity, and we need to update those. So the current use plan, which is something that you've seen previously, we have designated enough space for 5 Head Start classrooms, 6 adult education classrooms, and then some administrative areas, which you'll see down at the bottom. The multi-purpose space can accommodate a new boardroom. There's a small catering kitchen in the back. And then we have some other general conference spaces that could be utilized. So this could be used district-wide for flex space. So since we've been talking about budget, here are some potential solutions that our team has been talking about to modify and get us down into budget. We've been talking about utilizing the building for additional office space and multi-purpose meeting space. If we eliminated the classrooms from the facility, we could alleviate some of those OSF requirements, which are a little bit more stringent. So that would pull us down in the construction budget around 20%. And then if we take this opportunity to use the facility for office spaces, it could diminish our grant opportunity. So it's kind of a risk either way at this point. Right.
Speaking of the grant opportunities, we've been conducting some research with the help of Marcy Abrahamson in procurement, and reaching out to some of her colleagues to discuss these opportunities, some of which these individuals have taken advantage of. So research has been conducted to obtain some information about potential grant funding opportunities. And as Crystal mentioned, the current facility usage plan may offer the most amount of funding because you're using it as educational space for adult education as well as Head Start education. Some of the grant requirements may increase the initial cost, but it will be mostly offset by the awarded amount from the grant. And with these grants, if we don't get awarded the funding, we're not required to follow through with the improvements. So some of the questions that came up when this was initially presented was, what's the total cost to hire a specialized grant consultant? What's the success rate of actually receiving the funding from these grant campaigns? Are there any guarantees? Does the building use plan affect the grant opportunities? What benefits are there to adding the Berkeley Education Center to the National Historic Register? So at this point, we've been working, speaking with a consultant that's been helping us out gathering some of this information. Based on the information that we've received, it's been identified $3.75 million in funding that's been identified that we could currently go after with the current facility usage plan. And two, the charge or the fees for that would be right at 1%, or do the math, it's $37,000 to apply for this funding. That's what the grant writer would charge for pursuing these grant funding opportunities. All right, so what are the chances that Berkeley County will receive a return on investment? Typically, a skilled grant writer will have about a 75% success rate. If you take the $3.75 million and apply the 75% success rate, you're looking at about $2.8 million on a 1% investment of the $37,000 investment is what we will be looking at. And as noted at the bottom, there are no guarantees. However, If we went this route, we would need to submit an RFP for these services, and the success rate would be one of the criteria that's expressed with the RFP. Building use for grant considerations, as we mentioned before, the building's current intended use for adult education and Head Start would be useful, helpful in obtaining the grant funding. Also, identifying the site as a special needs shelter and backup for emergency operations will also improve our chances in obtaining some of this grant funding. Building alterations may be required, and that's what I was mentioning before, especially if we're talking about using it as a backup operations command center. Some upfits may be required, additional upfits may be required, but again, this should be offset by the awarded grant money. And I've already spoken to Tom Smith, who's our Director of Emergency Preparedness, and he's agreed to assist the district if we choose to pursue these grant fundings. Some of the benefits of adding the Berkeley Education Center to the Historical Register, basically it's notoriety, and it helps protect the building in the event that there are major improvements that take place in the town of Moncks Corner, in that area. If there are major road improvements, things of that sort, being on the National Historic Register will protect the building. One of the questions was, do we need to apply for the National Historic Register prior to making the improvements or applying for some of the funding? The answer is no. We can apply for the National Historic Register following at the completion of the project, as long as we maintain the architectural integrity of the project, and there's a specific style of architecture that's related to the 1920s, 1930s era. So as long as we maintain that integrity, we should be okay. We receive a bronze plaque identifying the property on the National Historic Register, and there are no fees to apply for this distinction. And we just covered that. This is a similar project. This is actually in Washington, Georgia. This building is an 1897 building, and one of the funds, grant funds that they're pursuing is a community block development grant. While the consultant that we've been speaking with considered the funding sources as proprietary, as that's how it makes this living, this is one of the grant funding opportunities that Berkeley County could pursue for this project. Additional funding sources or potential funding, it could include, we looked at the possibility of a nonprofit or a 501c being established. There's a lot of community interest, as you see here. I've had the opportunity to speak to some of the folks in the community that express their concern for the building and appreciation for the building. And there's a wide range of alumni that's gone on to do some tremendous things, from education to medicine and law, et cetera, that may be interested in contributing or assisting in helping to save the building. So with all of those considerations, the administration recommends that the district move forward with the stabilization of the Berkeley Education Center and secure the building's envelope to prevent continued deterioration of the building, as we consider how to address the budget gaps and then also the potential use of the building. So there, as you can see, the stabilization, it includes the demo of existing utility lines and reroute the new lines, demo of the unusable structures that are located in the rear of the building, some selective demolition on the interior, salvage any interior materials that we may be able to save, masonry restoration, roofing replacement, window replacement. You can see it all listed here. The next steps, and these are just options, not listed in any particular order. These are options. You can modify the building's use, the use plan, and eliminate the need to adhere to OSF requirements, which it will reduce the cost of construction. We could also hire a consultant to pursue alternate funding based on the original plan and designate the building as a special needs shelter and emergency backup for emergency operations center. We have over here, obtain board approval to either stabilize the building, consider revision, determine whether to hire a grant consultant. Then the next steps, if the building plan is modified, we need to go back to the architect and obtain a new plan to modify the building. For grant, if we select to hire a grant consultant, we need to submit an RFP to select that consultant. We have any questions?
I have one. If you do the recommendation that you have here, what kind of dollar figure are we talking about?
The recommendation for stabilization?
Yes.
It's approximately $2.1 million.
Okay.
Now that $2.1 million will offset the total $5 million of construction. So it's required. The stabilization process is required. So either route we go, if we use it as office space or classroom space, the stabilization would be required. So it wouldn't be any extra work. This will be work that's necessary.
Okay. If I understood correctly what you said, if we include the classroom for Head Start, that will increase the cost. Am I right?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you know, I think it's good if we could do this. I wasn't here when the commitments were made, but I think some commitment must have been made to preserve the building.
Can I clarify something?
Would you do that?
You asked would it cost more? It wouldn't cost more than what we're telling you now, but using it as office space would cost less.
Okay.
By approximately 20%.
Okay. What kind of commitment did we make to the community?
What I recall that was made to the community is that this was part of the bond referendum, and there would be a portion of money set aside in the bond referendum, and this project would be done last, and we would try to take any savings we had on any other bond referendum projects and put it towards this project at the end, which is why it's towards the end. So I feel like we have anticipated there may be a shortfall the whole time, or close to the whole time, but using it as classrooms gives you more grant opportunities if you pursue a grant writer.
That's correct. And, you know, our conversations with the consultant was done under the premise that we would use it under the current usage, with the current plan. If we alter that, we can have additional conversations with the consultants to see if we still qualify or what funding we qualify for. So while I outlined two options, there may be the potential to modify the existing plan and also pursue special grant funding.
I would think that would be especially true if we made it accessible for community use.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. Try to go back to the plan. Thank you, Mr. Franchini. I didn't realize there were this many slides. There we go. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Blackburn, you're correct. So this space here, this light purple color, this is the addition, the additional 7,000 square feet of space that would be added. This multi-purpose room, conference room, even the catering kitchen could be used for public use. But yes, ma'am, you're absolutely right. If we use some of the area as public space, that would open us up to qualify for more special grant funding.
So, I got a question, and I'll be upfront and honest. I'm going to take us down a rabbit trail for a few minutes. I do remember the bond referendum that, I think we made the commitment that we definitely, we're going to try and save that building and not tear it down, so that's not my rabbit trail. And I'm going to diverge a little bit and probably ask somebody in the audience a question, if that's not too much out of order. First of all, I just don't think $7.5 million is going to be enough to make the building sound. I remember a few years ago, we might remember we moved everybody out of that building because it was unsafe. I don't see how we're only going to spend $7.5 million and make it completely safe again, and also put in there the required fire protection, new HVAC systems, so on and so forth. So if I might put Mr. Locklear on the spot for a second, is the community more interested in the facade of the building or the facade and the inside? Because my thought is, would it be cheaper while we really determine what we want to use that building for, to demo the, per se, inside of it and do the work we need to do to preserve and stabilize the outside or the facade of the building until we actually figure out what we want to do with the building and then go from there? Mr. Locklear?
I would think the facade, but you have Ms. B. Johnson and Ms. Vicky back there, they could probably answer that question better than I can.
There are two schools of thought on this, Philip. Lots of people have called me, and if you haven't called me, I've talked to you about it. There are a group of people that are very adamant about saving the whole building, and there are some people who are very adamant about the 1929 and the front entrance of the building, and it depends on what school of thought you're in, but there are people who have a strong opinion of both.
Can I say this? We had a study performed on the building. Architect performed a study and put forth 3 proposals. One was to save the front facade of the school. One was a total demolition and reconstruction, which was actually the cheapest. Not by much, but it was the cheapest. And then the other was to save the entire structure, with the exception of those additional buildings and the additional structures behind it that are not usable, and to create the additional square footage. So the folks that were consulted, that was the option that was most preferable.
So, and they all stand behind saying it's only going to take $7.5 million to make this usable for classroom or office
Total
space?
construction cost, it was in the $5 million range. The additional $2.5 million is FF&E to outfit the building with equipment, technology, furniture, etc.
I don't know. I find it hard to believe that it's only going to cost that much money. I have to go dig through some stuff, but I didn't throw it away already. It seemed like 4 or 5 years ago we did a seismic study on all our buildings, and that was by far the worst. And that's when we made the decision to move folks out of there because it wasn't safe. But I mean, if you're telling us today that you can make that building completely safe and sound and restore it to the way that the community wants it for, the $5.5 million plus another $2.5 million to fully furnish it, then I'll believe it when I see it. I just think it's going to cost a whole lot more, especially when you start the historical part of it and you go in there and you find issues that you want to fix and make it right. It's going to cost a whole lot more than that, just because of the age of the building. We're talking 1929, correct?
Yes, it is 1929.
I mean, if we're going to do it, let's not do it halfway. Let's do it right the whole way, and make this safe and make it, a cornerstone of the community like they have seen it back then and as they want it now.
Are your numbers inflation adjusted? Are these the numbers that came out with the initial project?
These are the numbers that came out probably a year and 4 months ago at this point in time. But since that point, we've had conversations with other general contractors as well to try and get an estimate. And, those figures aren't too far off. To quote something unofficial, would you tell me office space would? Office space, if the building was converted to office space, we're looking at roughly $165 per square foot.
How many square feet is in the total building, the actual total square feet as we talking about currently now?
As the current plan with the addition,
With the additional?
with the addition,
Yes, with it, yeah.
is it 24,000? 24,000 square feet,
Was that 160? You said
165.
165 square feet? What's the total of that?
We're getting it for you right now, Mr. Wright. Mr. Obie's on it.
3.96.
Yeah, 3.9.
3.9 mil. And right now, the 2.5 mil pretty much is going to do some of the same thing that Philip was talking about. It's going to stabilize the buildings. It's going to tell you where we are with pretty much any additional cost. So you're looking at 3.9 to 4 to 5 mil to do what we said we could do.
That work, there is some additional site work.
Well, yeah,
But yes, sir.
Right.
Yes.
And I think we haven't completed all our construction sites yet. You know, are we where we want to be in terms of cost on a few of those sites, where we may have some more savings from some of those sites that we can apply this money toward this structure at the end of the construction process?
Well, we're hopeful of that.
Yeah, I know, but right now,
we're completing some of our major renovation. Well, the major renovation that we have at Goose Creek, as you know, with the existing structures, there are more surprises than new construction. So once that project is completed at Goose Creek High, we're all on new construction. Typically, there are less surprises, so that is definitely a possibility.
Absolutely. But I think that we want to do what we said we were going to do, particularly with the bond referendum money. And even if the facility is not the way we want it to be totally, I think we should try to make this, facility what it could be with whatever money that we have and whatever money that we have left from those other projects, because it's what we want to do, as a board, and what we said we would do. And, during the time that we passed the bond referendum, this particular location was one of the locations there, and people supported the bond referendum knowing that this facility was going to be restored and renovated. And so we want to make sure that we deliver, what we said we would do. That's just my position there, in spite of some costs that might be different.
Mr. Chairman, would you accept a motion so that we can narrow this discussion down to...
I will entertain a motion at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the recommendation of the administration for the stabilization plan of the Berkeley Education Center building as proposed by Stubbs, Muldrow, Heron Architects and presented by Mr. Jackson in agenda item number 7. The fees for these services shall not exceed $2.1 million.
I'll second.
I'll second that, too. I'll yield to you.
All right, we have a motion to accept the recommendation of the administration for the stabilization plan of the Berkeley Education Center building as proposed by the Stubbs, Muldrow, Heron Architects and presented by Mr. Jackson. And agenda item number 7, now the fees for these services shall not exceed $2.1 million. Do we have any further discussion?
Does this fee, I'm sorry, Shannon, I yield to you. We've talked and talked. Go ahead.
Okay, so a couple of questions. Number one, the cost for the consultant for the grant writing, do we pay them up front, or do they only get paid if we get the money?
No, ma'am, we pay them up front per grant that they write.
Okay, so if we don't get the money, then we're out. That, would we say $37,000 if we don't get the grant?
If we don't get any, yes, ma'am. However, I will say, even though the actual sources are considered proprietary, if we receive one of those, there are a couple in there that are 1.55 million, 1.5 million, 1 million, et cetera.
Okay. If we choose to not have this as Head Start and adult ed spaces and have it as maybe if we do office space and maybe a community area where we can have multi-purpose room and have community events in there, are there still grants that we can apply for with that?
Yes, ma'am.
And I know there was another question, and I'll come back to it, sorry.
Mr. Obie, did you have a question?
What's the cost to the architect for, they presented multiple choices with this, and I thought there was one that was no classrooms. Was that presented, or would we have to pay them to give us an alternate use plan? Do you remember? I'm sorry.
I don't recall seeing an alternate plan. We have made contact with the architects, and they are able to create a detailed plan such as this one for us. But yes, that would be an additional fee.
Like in the $37,000 range, or is that a minimal cost of?
Yeah, it would be a minimum cost, and actually, I've been in contact with the architect and working with them closely. A lot of this work they're willing to do schematically, conceptually, at no charge to us at this moment. Now, if we move further into design and change this scope, then yes, it would be an additional service to change the work so far.
I have one question before we vote.
Okay.
Do you plan to try to get this building on the historic register? Because it is a historical building, and there's a possibility of getting federal grants as a historical building. Why haven't we done that?
Well,
that's something I think we can do, whereby we can get some funds.
Yes, sir, I do understand that, and there is interest in registering the building for the National Historic Register. If we pursue that distinction prior to any restorations or upfits, if we consider that before the project, it's really stringent as far as the improvements and what we can and cannot do. If we pursue that distinction once we complete the project, and as long as we maintain the integrity of the architecture, and so it's relevant to that period, the 1929 period, whatever that time frame is, as long as we do that, then the building still qualifies regardless of what we do to the inside. It's more so the exterior, the architecture, and the aesthetics.
So we do plan, I know our plans are to try to keep the building as close to what it is.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'm saying, I heard what you told me, but my past experience with this tells me that you look at the building as being a historical building. If you keep the integrity of the building, that is our plan. So we don't plan to change the outside of the building. We plan to keep that.
That's correct.
That is what they're going to be looking for in relation to the historical register. That it's keeping its integrity. So we plan to do that. We need to start moving on that. If you wait, it's not going to make that much difference. But if you can, the sooner you can get it in, the sooner you can begin to apply for funds.
Yeah, but I would disagree with that. I think once you get it,
you don't change the integrity of the building.
I think once you put it as a historic site, you operate under an entirely new set of rules to restore that building, and it will cost 100 times more than the $7.5 million we're proposing here.
I think this is something that needs to have more research done, because we could sit here and talk about it until we actually know. I think we need to just put somebody on researching that and find out.
Check it out.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Question. I do have one more question. This $2.1 million for stabilization, what does that mean? Does that mean that we're going to fix the roof where it's collapsed? A few years ago, there was talk of the facade not being fully attached. Has that been fixed yet, or does this cover that? It
includes the roofing. It includes the masonry and repointing. It includes the windows. Includes some selective demolition on the interior, as well as those unusable structures that are in the rear of the building. There's a list of items that it includes. I'll have to go back to that list, but to answer your question, yes, ma'am, it does include the roof.
It's also your fire protection line, and they're going to take out historically significant items that we can keep to restore back to the building when it's complete. So this architect will help us and go through, and anything that we can say, there's beautiful doors in there, anything that we can reuse that is in good usable order, they will take those things out for us to put back in the building when it gets done. So that's also in this figure.
Okay, we've got a motion.
I got one more
We've
question.
had discussion.
One more question.
So that uncondemns the building?
It would not be able to occupy the space, no, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask all of our board members to consider the motion for what it is. This is not a commitment to complete the entire project at this time. It is only a commitment for $2.1 million to stabilize the building. I am very concerned that this could become a money pit in the future, and I think our folks from Moncks Corner can understand that concern. But that's not what we're voting on tonight, and we would not have that option in the future if we did not vote on this motion tonight to stabilize the building.
Right.
So let's save the building, and going forward, we can work with Mayor Locklear, First Lady, Principal Locklear. We can, in the future, determine where the additional funding will come from. But I think we've got a very honorable opportunity, as Ms. Harrop so described so eloquently, to save this building tonight. So let's focus on that. This is a $2.1 million commitment to save this treasure of Berkeley County. I'd ask that all of you support the motion.
Okay, we've had a motion. I'm going to reread the motion. To accept the recommendation of the administration for the stabilization plan of the Berkeley Education Building as proposed by the Stubbs, Muldrew, Herron Architects and presented by Mr. Jackson in our agenda item 7, and the fees for this service not to exceed $2.1 million. All of those in favor of this motion, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries and a 7-1.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Ms. Queen?
Mr. Brown, calling you.
Mr. Brantley, Thomas, financial items. And again, we have from A through H here, so I'm not going to read all of them. I'll turn it over to Mr. Brantley Thomas.
I hope you don't ask me to read them all as well. Looks like I waited all year long to do something, but I really didn't. We have before you a lot of items for action. The first 3 are bids. The first one is a chemical sanitation program for school nutrition services. These are items for the chemicals and cleaning supplies at all of our cafeterias, and we ask for you to award RFP 2016-7 to SFSPAC for a first-year cost of $74,774.56.
Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve our FP 20167 for chemical sanitation program to SFSPAC for an initial cost of $74,774.56, with the option to review for 4 additional years as presented by Mr. Thomas in Finance, Agenda Item A.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to approve the RFP 2016-17 for the Chemical Sanitation Program, SFSPAC, for an initial cost, $74,774.56, with an option to renew for 4 additional years as presented by Mr. Thomas in Finance Agenda Item 8A. It's been seconded. Do we have any discussion? Then all of those in favor of this motion, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Then that motion carries 8-0.
Item D is invitation for bid for serving lines at Timberland High. I believe the serving lines are original 1996 serving lines, and they're falling apart, so we wanted to replace those and get those upgraded in a safer environment as well. Again, these funds will be coming from school nutrition funds, so we ask for your approval to award the serving lines for Timberland High to FRS in Charleston for a cost of $79,001.90.
Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that we make a motion to approve IFB 2016-8 for serving lines at Timberland High School to FRS Charleston for initial cost of $79,001.90 as presented by Mr. Brantley Thomas in financial agenda item 8B.
I'll second.
We have the motion to approve IFB 2016-8 for the serving lines at Timberland High School to FRS of Charleston for an initial cost of $79,001.90 as presented by Mr. Thomas in Finance Agenda Item 8B. Do we have any discussion?
This is a typo, right? There's 86 on the paper, and he said 79. Is there a...
You talking about what was online?
Yes, sir.
Well, this is what.
Yep, it's 79.
It's 79. Okay.
79.
Very good.
All right, all of those in favor of this motion, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Again, 8-0, Mr. Thomas.
8C, best value bid for district-wide terrazzo repair. We had a need just to have a go-to person for terrazzo repairs, and that bid we'd like to award to Doyle Dickerson Terrazzo. We don't have initial cost because we just wanted to have somebody to go to when we needed to repair. So I ask for your award this to Doyle Dickerson for best value bid, $476 for district terrazzo repairs.
If you've not been in the schools and seen the terrazzo floors, they're wonderful. So I make a motion to approve BVB 476 for district-wide terrazzo repairs to Doyle Dickerson Terrazzo Incorporated as presented by Mr. Thomas in Finance Agenda Item 8C.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? And all those in favor of this motion, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Thank you. The next three items are bond resolutions. The first one is our annual resolution to issue a tax anticipation. As you know, we don't receive district or local tax revenues until about December, January. So this is just cash flow to get us through that time period related to meeting payrolls and that sort of thing. So we ask for your vote to approve the bond resolution of not to exceed $16 million.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the resolution for the fiscal year 2016-2017 tax anticipation note of not to exceed $16 million as presented by Mr. Thomas in Finance Agenda Item 8D.
Second.
We have a motion. It's been seconded to approve the resolution for the fiscal year 2016-17 tax anticipation note of not to exceed $16 million as presented by Mr. Thomas, Finance Agenda Item 8D. Any discussion? Yes.
What was it last year?
I believe it was about 15 million. 15, okay, yeah, 15 million last year.
And the increase this year is more employees, is that what it is?
Some of that, a lower estimate of the fund balance, and then there's also some issues I'll talk about when we talk about the budget.
Thank you.
Is this McNair that is doing this?
Yes.
What's the proposed interest rate on that?
We will go to sale in the first of the year, but last year it was like 2.216%. So we look for that same or better.
Okay. All right, then no further questions. I'll ask the question. All of those in favor of this motion, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, another 8-0, mister.
Thank you. Item E is a bond resolution for annual installment revenue purchase bond payments, special obligation bonds, and 8% capital monies. This is the annual issue that we have to perform to make annual payments for principal and interest on our nonprofit bonds, the SAFE bonds. We issued the $52 million equipment acquisition, those annual payments for that. And then we still have the Qualified Zone Academy bond and then the energy bond that we did a few years ago. So these monies go to pay those annual debt payments. And what's left, we have the use for capital improvements, which is around that $2.4 to $3 million number that we use for capital improvements. Ask for your approval.
All right, I make a motion to approve for the fiscal year 2016-17, the bond resolution for annual installment revenue purchase bond, that's the SAFE bonds, and special obligation bonds and 8% capital of not to exceed $43 million as presented by Mr. Thomas in Finance Agenda Item 8E.
Second.
The motion has been made to approve the 2016-17 bond resolution for the annual installment revenue purchase bond, SAFE bonds, and special obligation bonds, 8% capital of not to exceed $43 million, as presented by Mr. Thomas, and it's been seconded. Is there any discussion?
Is the safe bonds, that's Hainsworth?
No, this is McNair.
McNair does this now? Okay. So I can vote on this?
Well, yes, you can.
Okay.
Remind me how that works again? We issue these for what again?
The annual payments for the SAFE bonds with the securing assets for education, and we have to use 8% availability to issue these monies to make those annual payments, since the state legislators took away the ability to just have that on our debt service.
Okay.
So it's an inefficient way to do it, but that's what our state legislators make us do.
All right, no further discussion, then we'll put it to the vote. All of those in favor of this motion, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. And on a roll.
And the last bond resolution is to save money. We have a 2006 series out there that is was refunded from the 1999 referendum, and we want to do an advanced refund because we are starting to see the rates go up. So we ask for your approval to issue not to exceed 33.5 to refund those 2006 series bonds. And the potential savings at this point in time is $1.1 million over the remaining 6 years of payments.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve the resolution for general obligation bonds, advanced refunding not to exceed $33,500,000 as presented by Mr. Thomas in Finance Agenda Item 8F.
Second.
May I have the motion to approve the resolution for general obligation bond advanced refunding of not to exceed $33,500,000 as presented by Mr. Thomas in Finance Agenda Item 8F, and it's been seconded. Any discussion?
McNair?
Yes.
Any further? Then all those in favor of this motion, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, Mr. Thomas.
Funding flexibility, if you remember in 2007, 8-ish, the state allowed school districts to start flexing funds from special specific allocations towards the general fund to offset any sort of budget cuts. So this is just an annual allocation that we've, process that we've actually kind of done, and it's more efficient to actually charge some of this stuff to the general fund. And so we're just kind of flexing what's left over to the general fund, and you can see the list of funds and estimated amount left. And we ask for your approval, and I will need to get your signature, Mr. Hayes, before you leave tonight.
Do I have a motion?
You do, Mr. Chairman. In regards to Board Agenda Item 8G, I make a motion to approve the FY 2015-2016 State Funding Flexibility Form Proviso 1.28, 1.33, and 1A.15 as presented by Mr. Thomas in Finance Agenda Item 8G.
I'll second.
We have a motion to approve for the fiscal year 15-16 state funding flexibility form proviso 1.28, 1.33, and 1A.15 as presented by Mr. Thomas in Finance Agenda Item 8G, and it has been seconded. Any discussion?
Not to be a pain, but what is on the top of this form does not match the agenda item.
it says 1.31, 1.36, and 1A.16.
Well, then, we got the agenda wrong.
The agenda's wrong.
This is the official.
This is
the right
official,
one.
this
Yeah.
is right, so we probably
So
need
listen,
to.
it's a friendly amendment, I'll accept it, absolutely, Mr.
We'll
Chairman.
update the provisos to be 1.31, 1.36, and 1A.16.
Okay.
1A.16? Mr. Chairman, just for the record, I make a motion, and it's been amended, to approve the fiscal year 2015-2016 state funding flexibility form proviso 1.31, 1.36, and 1A.16 as presented by Mr. Thomas in Finance Agenda Item 8G. Is that correct, Ms. Walker? Thank you for catching that.
Those were last year proviso numbers, and they changed them, so I didn't catch that.
Before we call,
yeah.
Before we call the question, Mr. Thomas, we've got a number of leadership students from the Citadel in the audience tonight. You'll be speaking to about 14 of them on Thursday night.
Correct.
What does this flexibility allow you as a director of finance regarding the funding from the 15-16 year?
In the past, this has been used actually to maybe not use the funds for which they were given to us for, but we're actually now using the funds for what the purpose are that's listed on here. And but in the past, we've used that to offset major cuts in the general fund. But we're actually now using them for the purpose in which they are given to us.
Thank you.
Who was the second? Lee.
Okay, then we'll call the question. All of those in favor of the motion to approve fiscal year 2015-16 state funding flexibility form proviso 1.31, 1.36, and 1A.16 as presented by Mr. Thomas, Finance Agenda Item 8G. All of those in favor of this motion, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you. The presentation that we have is basically the same presentation you saw last time, so I'm not going to really go through that unless you ask me to. I was going to kind of just talk about some things that have changed since the 24th to now.
Brent.
And I kind of...
Brantley,
Yes.
if you don't mind, I'd like to just say a couple of words
Yeah, I'm
before
sorry.
you start.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'd just like to remind the board that this budget that you're seeing this evening is the product of many hours of conversation and input from virtually every source, from the board, from our schools, from our departments, and it represents the best thinking that we could bring to you around the available funds. We didn't have a great windfall of money this year. In fact, this budget represents just a little bit over $19 million more than we had in the 2015-2016 school year. And I'd like to make some summary points about where the money in the budget has gone, the new money. Of the $19.1 million, $10.86 million has gone to compensation improvement. $3.37 million has gone to growth units, of which there are 43 budgeted and 33 are already in our schools to meet the growth and enrollment that we anticipate for August. $3.62 million go to fund the addition of 3 school plants to our inventory, and those are Philip Simmons Elementary School, Philip Simmons Middle School, and Philip Simmons High School. A small piece of it is for the high school. More will be in the 17-18 budget. So that comes to $17.85 million of the $19.1 million that were available to us, and I think that represents a real focus on not only the employees in our district, but also on very necessary expenditures to address growth and to take care of the 3 buildings that have been funded through the bond referendum. So that left just a very little bit of money for us to do some other things, and those went into restoration items, things that have been lost by the school district in the recession over the last many years when there's been a real lack of discretionary funding for schools. It went into board priorities, school priorities, and some special programs about which the board has expressed an interest as well as our schools have expressed an interest. So that kind of gives you a capsule of what this budget includes. includes. And, I believe that it really focuses on the most important things in our school district, and urge your close consideration and support for this budget. And Brantley, you're the great guy with the numbers, so I did the estimation. He'll give you the pennies and right down to the penny.
Thank you.
It's yours. Thank you.
As you may or may not have seen in the paper last weekend, we did our public notice for the public hearing on June 28th, I believe, at 5:30. And so at that point in time, we'll actually vote on the budget as you like it to be. I do want to talk about a couple of changes that have happened since the last presentation, or information items that have come down from the State Department of Education. The first is there has been an allocation to school districts called Aid to Districts, and it's been for a maintenance of effort for IDEA to help us meet that requirement for special funds in IDEA. And there's been an ongoing lawsuit between the state of South Carolina and the federal government. Well, they've just now kind of gotten to almost an agreement. So the state of South Carolina has frozen the funds that we received for 15-16, and that will cause us about a $700,000 shortfall for 15-16, which is part of the tax anticipation note issue. So we'll be watching that. There will be a new allocation for next year, but we don't know what sort of strings will be attached to it. So we've kind of started to, and we're not the only ones that happened to it. It happened to all the other school districts as well. So so we'll just be watching that, and I just wanted to kind of share that information related to the 15-16 budget, and it may impact next year as well, but I don't know for sure. The other news, unfortunately, it doesn't offset this because it's a different program, but there was a lot of discussion about teacher recruiting and retention. And as us being part of the equity lawsuit group, we benefited from an additional allocation for teacher recruiting and retention. And it turns out to be about $40 per student. So there is a allocation of schools, districts that were part of the lawsuit, and then some school districts that actually met the poverty rating. So our allocation is almost $1.3 million. We'll be able to use that for teacher recruiting and retaining. There may be some things that we're doing in the general fund that we might be able to use this fund for and free up some general fund items to do some other stuff, but all that is being vetted out as we speak. These funds are non-recurring, so they may not come back next year, so we don't want to do a lot of things that are recurring. So we could use it for possibly in the idea of recruiting, maybe going to more schools and colleges and that sort of thing, but also bonuses and those kinds of things, and also maybe some rural school mileage as it relates to retaining or getting people to those schools. Being that it's not tied just to our rural schools, since we're part of the lawsuit, we can use it district-wide, from what I understand. But they are still vetting out the rules related to this, and we may not know until July or maybe even August, but we'll just keep an eye out on that. But this was something that good that happened, so wanted to share that with you. As it relates to the budget presentation, I did want to remind you again that we did post the public hearing. And if you remember the priorities, we can go through those again if you'd like, but if not, I wanted to remind you that the first reading includes a millage increase of 3.9 mils. Without that, there's some things that Ms. Blackburn talked about that we will not be able to do. So I do want to remind you of that. And again, the mills do not impact your home. It would impact your car, business, those sorts of things. But I do want to remind you of that. The budget, if it is passed at that 3.9 mils, is looking to be about $250, I think, $7 or $8 million, somewhere in that range. So unless you want me to go through any more details, I ask for your approval for the first reading, and we'll talk more in detail at the public hearing.
Do we have a motion?
You do, Mr. Chairman. I make a motion to approve the first reading of the fiscal year 2016-2017 budget as presented by Mr. Thomas in Finance Agenda Item 8H.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the first reading of the fiscal year 2016-17 budget as presented by Mr. Thomas in Finance Agenda Item 8H. Do we have any discussion?
Mr. Thomas, the $1.3 million, that is from the Abbeville decision?
Yes.
I would just ask the district to remember Steve Morrison, who was the wonderful attorney and a great friend and always picked up the dinner check. You always love those kind of friends. Sadly, he died before this decision was rendered. So let's remember all those people who fought for those of us who do not have the tax basis that we see from some of our wealthy neighbors, for example, Charleston County folks out
If
there.
you also remember, we also got an allocation for bus driver salary, and that was part of
Outstanding.
this as well.
Outstanding.
That's, over $1 million for that.
He was a wonderful man. Thank you.
All right, then I'll call the question. Oh, wait a
I
minute.
have one question. How many students are we expecting for this upcoming school year?
Based on, being that this is the general fund K-12, 135-day ADM, I did a historical of the last 4 or 5 years, and the number is estimated at about 750 kids, children. So that's what I base the revenue on, and that's what we base the growth units on. So the cost and the new revenue really don't outweigh it because of the funding mechanism, but it's I based it on about 750 kids.
Thank you.
What was the millage increase last year?
17.
And then what's the millage increase related to the referendum that's coming?
That was also in the public notice, and that will be 10 mills.
10 mills, and then we're looking at increasing it. How much?
3.9.
It's 30.9.
So 30.9 mills in the last 2 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Thomas, I just wanted to clarify, you had made a statement earlier that this would not affect our homes. I know
The general
you meant
fund side, yes.
Well, the owner-occupied homes were the homes you were speaking about. All 6% rooftops would receive that increase, is that correct?
That is correct. And we could thank our state legislators for that rule.
I will not thank them for that one. Thank you.
I'll be in facetious.
Yes, I know you will.
All right, any further discussion?
I'd like to just ask a question, just for a point of reference. Would you mind telling us what the per-student allocation is and where that is in reference to 2006?
Yes, and if you remember in the presentation, the allocation for next year is $2,350 a student. We don't receive 100% of that because we have an index of taxpaying ability, which reduces that to about 76% of that number. Last year was $2,200, so it was a bigger increase than I thought. But again, there was a lot of controversy over roads versus education. Based on the May Board of Economic Advisors report, there's $330 million increase in revenue from the same period last year to this year. And they've elected to do other things with that.
And how far
And
are we behind it from 2006?
2006-7, we're actually still below 2006-7. 2006-7 was $2,467. And between that same period of time, without impacting or indexing it for inflation, we've had multiple years of step increases and or budget requirements, unfunded mandates that we've had to keep in the system.
Thank you.
Whatever that value is probably even, if we had, I think the Board of Economic Advisors recommended rate, had everything stayed on track, is over $2,900, and that would equal about $18 million new dollars for us.
Superintendent Blackburn, I would also point out to you, you haven't been with us too long, but I'm glad you're here, and I hope you'll stay a long time. But prior to last year, Berkeley County School District's cost per pupil ranked 67 out of
Correct.
81 school districts.
Correct.
Yeah.
We spend very little of our tax money out of our own pockets for education in Berkeley County. So I know it's tough to pass a tax increase, but we ought to at least have a goal of getting to the average, whatever that may be. So, Mr. McQuillan, I heard you counting the mills. I would remind you just how low we are. And academically, Dr. O'Gorman, we're 24th out of 81. You're hitting it out the park on a beer budget. So my Charleston County students, you live on a champagne budget. I tease you about it all the time.
That's why Kevin has hair, doesn't have hair, and I have hair.
So Charleston County folks feel our pain. We are jealous of your value of a mill. But I would not want anyone to leave here feeling that a Berkeley County taxpayer is paying more than their share for education. That's simply not true.
I'd also like to remind everyone that for this year's budget, the mill increase was a catch-up period of 3 years that we actually enacted on. So it wasn't, if we'd done it every year, it wouldn't have been that so much in 1 year, but it was a catch-up provision.
And the debt service millage increase, that cannot be enacted without the permission of the people. Am I correct, Mr. Thomas?
And it was enacted as a result of the positive passing of the referendum.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Then the motion is to approve the first reading of the fiscal year 2016-17 budget as presented by Mr. Thomas, Finance Agenda Item Number 8H. All of those in favor of this motion, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
And that motion passes 7-1. Moving on to agenda item number 9, instruction and accountability. An item for action is the proficiency-based application. Dr. O'Gorman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Ms. Spikeburn, ladies and gentlemen. I hope this is the easiest thing you have to do all night. In September 2014, we brought before you our proficiency-based application, which is essentially a request of a waiver from the State Department of Education to allow us to provide online courses for our students needing Carnegie units for a variety of reasons, medically homebound, summer programs, students that transfer into us during the middle of the year that might be coming from a traditional schedule or an AB schedule, so that we can offer them courses that are not necessarily in sync with our own. So our proficiency system allows us to offer initial credit and credit recovery in a number of circumstances. Typically, we use the South Carolina Virtual School, our own virtual program, which is part of the South Carolina system, and Apex, all accredited programs. We do use another software program called A+ for content recovery, which is sort of a tutoring program. So we're not doing anything much different than we've done in the past. The State Department has updated their process where we submit this with our 5-year strategic plan. So this will get us going for the next 5 years if you approve it tonight. So I recommend that you approve this application so that we can submit it to the State Department for approval.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the submission of the proficiency-based application to the State Department of Education as submitted by administration in Agenda Item 9.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to approve the submission of this proficiency-based application of the State Department to the State Department of Education as submitted by administration in Agenda Item 9. Any discussion? Then all of those in favor of this motion, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, Mr. O'Gorman,
Thank you.
Got it. 8-0. All right, we're looking at agenda item number 10, the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Chairman Hayes. We're going to put some dates up here for you to look at because it's time for us to think about school year 2016-2017. So I've provided you with a proposal for your meeting dates for the upcoming school year. The dates largely follow your usual second and fourth Tuesday schedule with the following exceptions. In November, which is usually a one-meeting month, I I have proposed November the 15th, the third Tuesday, because the second Tuesday is Election Day. So in that one, still just one meeting, but also on the third Tuesday. December usually has one meeting date as usual, and so it is scheduled for the second Tuesday, which is December 13th. In April, I have proposed that we look at the first and fourth Tuesdays for the meeting. They fall on April 4th and April 25th, and the reasoning is that the second Tuesday falls within the spring break. So both from the perspective of our employees and staff who may want to take some holiday time then, but also for those of you who may have children and want to do the same thing. All the meetings will be held in the boardroom of the Berkeley County Board of Education building except as noted, and these are July the 12th, the board retreat will be held at Minriv Education Park from 5 to 9. October the 11th provides the option to have the board meeting at St. Stephen Middle School, following your tradition of trying to take our meetings out into the communities at some point. March the 14th provides the option to have the board meet and hold our Teacher of the Year recognition at Philip Simmons Elementary and Middle School joint campuses. So this is presented for your action this evening. I would like to just talk a minute about the Philip Simmons Elementary and Middle Schools, because what happens with them in terms of their opening and dedication might have an impact on these off-site or out of the boardroom meetings in 16-17. We're doing really great with the construction schedule with Philip Simmons Elementary and Middle, but it is an aggressive schedule. And right now, the building is planned to be ready to receive furniture on July the 18th. The South Carolina Office of School Facilities Occupancy and Inspection begins on July the 22nd. August the 5th is the time that we expect to get a certificate of occupancy for the building. August 9th is the first day for teachers, and August the 15th is the first day for students. So it's a very, very aggressive timeline. And so in the interest of trying to honor what a tight timeline it's going to be, I would propose that we do only a soft opening for the schools in terms of an opportunity for the community to know they're open, and do something at a later date that would be a more formal dedication. So in speaking with Principal Whitley and Anthony today, they recommended that we do a soft opening, which would be a ribbon cutting only on Sunday, August the 14th at 1 o'clock. And that way, that's the same day that they're going to have people be able to come into the building and meet their teachers. So we could do that 1 o'clock ribbon cutting, then let the folks go on and meet the teachers, and then at a later date, do a more formal ceremony. And I mention it in relationship to the calendar because I had thought that there might be some potential to do it in relationship to a school board meeting at that facility. But looking at it, it's a pretty complex maneuver to try to do that and have a school board meeting that night as well. So I would tend to say let's do the soft opening, then see when the schools would like to do a more formal service and not keep it in the context of a school board meeting. So with that, I would again recommend the dates that I've proposed, but do want you to know that we're up against a little bit of a time issue as far as the opening of our two schools.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the 2016-2017 board meeting dates as submitted by the administration, agenda item 10.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the 2016-17 board meeting dates as submitted by administration and agenda item 10. Is there any discussion? Then all of those in favor of this motion, please respond by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right.
Mr. Chair, I move that we move into executive session for the discussion of a pending employment matter, including the appointment of an administrator.
Second.
All right, I have the motion to move into executive session for the discussion of a pending employment matter, including appointment of administrators. It's been seconded. Do we have any discussion? Then all of those in favor of this motion, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Then we are in executive session.